Good afternoon and welcome to OmniDog's Vault. We are live for the punk rock show. And so far I'm not echoing, so that means I've done the right thing on YouTube. I've muted it. And I've got two certified bona fide punks with me today to help me with the history of punk and comics and punk in rock music. So first we've got Reed Chancellor.
Hello.
Reed, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How are you?
And Reed's bona fides are that not only was he in a punk band up until 2015, but he has written a graphic novel about punk rock musicians, I believe. Reed, is that right?
Yeah, it's like it's half about like other punk people and then mostly like about myself. It's like a nonfiction graphic memoir about my experiences in punk rock and then also in mental health.
And mental health. Okay. Yes. And we'll talk about that more in a sec. And then we've got the fabulous Steve Anderson, owner of three branches now of Third Eye Comics, originating in Annapolis. And Steve, I've known you since 2008 when you used to be next to the Little Coin Exchange.
Yeah.
Back in the way back days, over 10 years now I've known you.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I used to go to Third Eye Comics when it was, compared to what you've got now, it was a little hole in the wall, but I thought it was a big, nice comic store, but what you got now is unbelievable. And Steve, of course, is the East Coast representative of punk rock. I'm the West Coast old man representative of what punk was like back in the day. And Steve was here in Baltimore and can tell you, we can talk about what punk was like back in when, the 90s or 80s?
I mean, most of the stuff when I was going to shows, probably like late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Like up until like the mid 2000s, pretty much when Third Eye opened. I couldn't get out to shows anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, but like now, like I try to make it out, but I just don't get out. But yeah, like early 2000s, late 90s.
That's awesome. So now I dug into my record collection and cassettes and 45s. This is how far back I go. And this is what started it all for me. Now, I don't have any boss tattoos like you guys. I noticed Reed has tattoos, and I know Steve's got the Black Flag bars on him. I don't have any boss tattoos, but I do have. This is what started it all for me. The Black Flag, the first 4 years.
Yeah.
First 4 years cassette. I used to put this in my Walkman, and I would get on my skateboard, my Black Flag skateboard that you'd flip over, and what's the name of that artist, Steve, that does...
oh, man, it was Rat Bones, I think?
Raymond Pettibon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Greg Ginn's brother.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they apparently don't like each other, but
yeah, but the one that you gave me, Jess, I don't think it was a Pettibon.
It was.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay, I might be wrong. Okay, cool.
It says "No Net Ever" on it, and it's got the devil doing the trapeze thing. Yeah. That was I discovered
after the show, or when I get home tonight, so you can like throw it up there.
Okay, that'd be good. I can.
Yeah.
Because Steve wasn't able to bring it, but it was my original Third Eye. It was my original Black Flag skateboard that I used to skate around in California and listen to Black Flag on. And I don't know, 2009, 2010, I was cleaning out the garage and I said, what am I going to do with this skateboard? I said, I bet Steve would dig this skateboard. So we did a trade for comic books for skateboard in typical punk rock fashion where we traded. And so now Steve has the skateboard, and I found that skateboard. It was like a blow-in to a Black Flag album back in the day. And it cost me $100, which I did not have. I didn't have $100 back then. This was 1980. I want to say it was 1983, 1984, 1983, right in there. And it came, and I had the guards put on it on the bottom. aren't there red guards on it that you can like grab on?
Yeah.
And I had those put on it, and I did it's in pretty good shape. I didn't beat it up too bad. It's in pretty nice
it's in really
shape.
good shape, man. Yeah. The trucks are still good, and I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna get on it, but
Right.
like I'm afraid if I do that, I might mess something up on it. It's so nice. I don't want to screw it up, you know, like.
Yeah, it definitely got used, but I took care of it, and
Yeah.
so that was cool that I was able to do that trade. And then I know that this is a group that represents. This is my other cassette tape that I used to listen to all the time when I was on my skateboard, and that is Bad Brains.
Oh yeah.
From here in DC. That was probably the fastest guitar work on a punk album ever that I can remember. If there's anybody faster than the Bad Brains, I'd like to know.
No, I don't think there is. They're fastest on everything, not just guitars. They're just the fastest in general.
They're so awesome. They're one of the best.
Now, have they regrouped, or
they did that one record, but I'm trying to think. I can't remember the name of it, but I don't know if they've like officially regrouped or they've just kind of been back and forth on it. Because I know HR like randomly gets like a whole new band together every once in a while.
Okay.
But I don't think he's really doing Bad Brain stuff as much as he's just doing whatever he wants.
And we have a question. Yes, Jake, this is the original Roar cassette that I got back in the early 80s.
So cool.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah. And of course, now, my Walkman doesn't work and I have nothing to play cassettes on. So, which is probably good. It'd probably make me want to get out and get on a skateboard, and I'd end up breaking my leg. I do have, before we get into it, I do have one good story. Well, I don't want to shoot all my stories off at once here. I got a bunch of 45s and I got a bunch of LPs I just randomly grabbed them. I mean, I got hundreds, of course, of both, as both you guys probably do too.
Oh yeah.
Or CDs or whatever modem of listening you young people listen to, or on your iPhone or whatever.
Too much of everything.
Yeah. So I guess my first question, Reed, is what your graphic novel, what you're pulling from your own experiences and from other people's experiences?
Yeah, so it's like the full title is Hardcore Anxiety, a graphic guide to punk rock and mental health. And so the whole idea was sort of to take my experiences with both punk and mental health and how they really go together in a lot of ways, and then take examples from like bands throughout history and how they've really kind of also like represented mental health, and then also like connected super big to punk rock. So like, I mean, it's my life, or you know, my full experience playing in bands, and then having depression and bipolar disorder and all these other sort of things kind of thrown into it. But you know, I highlight certain bands. Like there's a couple pages where I talk about the Bad Brains, and then like HR has schizophrenia, and so I talk a little bit about that. As well as, you know, what some people classify as the first punk record being Nervous Breakdown by Black Flag. That whole song is completely tied to mental health. So it's kind of like taking certain things about punk and the idea of punk and then throwing it all together in like one whole relevant topic and story. If that makes sense.
And it does. Kristen, has your significant other has kindly put in the chat the where you can order it from
Microcosm Publishing.
Yeah. Microcosm Publishing. Okay, and that's where you can pre-order the book.
Yes.
And so you not only talk about your battles with mental health, but other people's battles along the way that you encountered.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't go super deep into, I guess, other people's battles with it, just because I don't know all their personal stuff. So it's a lot more of like how I experienced it, and then finding all those other people through the experience kind of helped me get through a lot of things.
Okay. That's cool. And when will that book come out?
That book will come out in October. It was actually scheduled to come out next year, but when we put it out and made it available for pre-orders, there were too many pre-orders, so they moved it up, which is super awesome. So
too many pre-orders. What a problem to have.
I know, right? It was pretty crazy. I honestly couldn't believe it. So it's been a long time. I've been working on that book for like nearly 2 years, so it took a long time to get there, but I'm super excited for it to come out.
And Steve, you have done what I think is, in this day and age, is almost impossible. You have created a small comic book empire. You've got 3 stores now. The Third Eye in Annapolis, I read an article back in the fall which voted it the #1 comic book store in the United States. And I've certainly been there enough to know that it is a model of not only having a copy of everything. It has a huge graphic novel section, a ridiculously huge manga section, and every copy, you've got vintage comics, you've got new comics, but the most important part is at Third Eye is the customer service, because your customer service is second to none. You cannot even walk in that door without somebody saying, "Hey, how's it going? Can I help you?" And if you linger in there, you finding everything all right? And that is not typical of comic book stores, where you go in there and just get randomly ignored.
Yeah. No, we just try to give people the kind of experience that we would like to see. And I mean, when we opened the store, that was kind of what I strove for, was to kind of give people the experience that I liked getting when I went into stores. And I mean, and it's not just symptomatic of comic shops. There's a lot of places, record stores where you go in and you're like, can I ask you for help, or or no? And it's fun, I mean, it's a fun environment. We're selling, fun things. And I mean, at the end of the day, we want to give people escapism, and, you don't want to make people bummed out if they're coming to a fun place, That's what the DMV is for, or MVA or whatever we call it.
Right. The District, Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah. Not that DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Oh, that DMV. You don't want to get that kind of DMV vibe.
I love the DMV, but not the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were back in the punk scene, riding your skateboard, seeing shows in Baltimore. Do you have what are some of your favorite memories back when you were like, now you were a wee lad when this was going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got into it in like the late 90s into the early 2000s. So like, all the stuff like Black Flag and all that, like it was too late for me to see any of them. The closest I would get is like if Rollins Band was doing like a tribute thing or something like that. But no, it was fun. Like we just really, like my friends and I we would go to DC or Baltimore and go see shows. And like, I mean, even when I was a little kid, like, in like the like 80s and stuff, like, I would stumble into comics and like, I don't know, there was always kind of an undercurrent. There's always a connection, you know what I mean, between punk rock and comics, especially into like independent stuff and things like that.
Right. And there was a bit of a do-it-yourself aesthetic going on with punk rock and with certain comics too, like zines and things like that.
Yeah, totally. Like I'm a big Evan Dorkin fan, and I remember like just like being a teenager, and that you're finding out about like a lot of the like first wave ska bands and stuff like that through that, and and it's cool. Everything before the internet was so much more fun.
I don't know that I disagree with that. I think you might be right.
Yeah. I think my generation of going to shows was probably the last generation before like we had like the internet was a thing in the early 2000s and late 90s, but like it was still like message boards, and you couldn't get like an entire discography like all at once, you know what I mean? You still had to kind of dig. Mm-hmm. And like you guys probably are both familiar with like having to like track down bands through liner notes, and you see the flyers and the liners and stuff, and you're like, oh, who's this? And then you buy the album and it sucks, or
I can go through some of my 45s with some of the. This is just some of the stuff I grabbed to see if we could get some. Some of this stuff is funny. Let's see. I've got Charged GBH.
Yeah, I love GBH.
British band.
Yeah.
City Baby Attacked by Rats, which was really fast. Now these guys were from California, the Insolents. I don't know if you guys know them, but I really like this. And that's what I'm going to have, a bunch of obscure.
I've heard them, man.
Here's 7 Seconds.
Yeah, good stuff.
Oh yeah.
With Kevin Seconds on the back. Now, my friend and I, who was into punk rock with me, we always had a debate whether these guys were punk or not, but we didn't care because we thought TSOL made great music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so we just decided they were because we liked them. I'd go over to his house and say, okay, here's the top 10 for today. And we'd sit there and listen to music. And I was kind of, I lived in Central California, and so all the bands would either come to like San Francisco, or you'd have to go down to Santa Monica or LA to see. That's seemed to be where they were all located. But right around 82, 83, this place called the Great American Music Hall, which is a stupid name, but it opened in Monterey, and Black Flag came there. And I went to see the Dead Kennedys in Palo Alto, and I also saw Stiv Bader's group. I'm blanking on the name. Lords of the New Church, and I went. Who's not really punk, but Stiv Bader's at the show threw the mic up over a rafter and then like tied the mic around his neck and pretend to hang himself, only he like really hung himself, and they had to cut the show off right there because he like ended up going to the hospital so they could revive him because he snapped his throat bone or something. I don't know.
Man, it's like Darby Crash stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then yeah. And my friend, I remember, see, I'm exactly like I was back then. I'd be in like a button-down shirt and jeans and just short hair, but I just loved the music. And my friend came over, and in my bathroom sink, he started mixing up orange Jello. And I go, dude, what are you doing? And he said, we got to get our hair sticking up. And I go, I'm not putting orange Jello in my hair. And so he put all this orange Jello in his hair, and got this Herkin mohawk with the Jello set and everything. I said, that's great, but you can do that. I'm not doing that. I mean, that's just not me. I just want to sit and get into the show. And of course, I did not take part in the mosh pit or anything. Even though the mosh pit was perfectly friendly, they were just running around in a circle. That's all they did. And it's not like they were slamming against each other or anything, but that wasn't my deal. I guess I was too old at 24 for that deal. It needed youngsters of 15 to do it, since it was an all ages show. Let's see. Here's from Dead Kennedys, East Bay Ray.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is. Violent Nun. I don't know who that is. And I'm really embarrassed that the only X I could find, this is really actually embarrassing. I shouldn't even show it. It's the Breathless from the Breathless movie.
Oh,
they did. This is the worst thing they ever did, and this is the only X single I could find.
I don't have the same level of distaste for it. I like X a lot.
Oh, I love X. I've seen him 3 times in Santa Cruz, and I love him. But I always thought, why are they doing this dumb Richard Gere movie?
It's so ridiculous.
What's more punk than Richard Gere, man?
I don't know, man.
Oh,
Let's see, I got some DOA, which is good. Some more 7 Seconds, and then the classic Dead Kennedys one that I don't.
Yeah.
Which is a classic.
Yeah.
And then here's one I have actually a story for. This is, I don't know if you'll remember this group, Steve, but Palehead. Do you remember them at all? They were local.
Yeah.
Even though even though this is on from Chicago, I went to, I don't know if you remember Yesterday and Today Records in Rockville.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I went to get a lot of really cool music. It was a really cool record store that had a lot of cool 45s and was really big. And I went there one time, and I live in Alexandria, so Rockville's a haul to get there.
Yeah.
And they had something playing, and I said, "Hey, this is really cool. What is it?" And he said, "It's Palehead." And I said, "Okay, I'd like to get it." And he said, "Well, if you like, one of the artists that's on the 45 is here, and he'll sign it for you." And I go, "Oh, okay."
That's cool.
And so this guy with a shaved head comes over, and he said, "Hey, how's it going?" I go, "Cool. This music's really cool." And he said, "Oh, well, thank you very much." And he signed it, and I go home. And I start looking at the credits and who's on the band and everything. It was freaking Ian MacKaye that signed my 45. I'm like, Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat and Fugazi. And I'm like, holy, how did I not recognize him? I mean, he was just, he was just Ian MacKaye. He was a regular guy. I'm like, God bless America. I just met the guy. It's like meeting a Beatle practically, and I could have said something to him. I totally choked on that one, but I got his autograph.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, what do you want to show us your Black Flag tats on your neck, Steve?
Well, my obligatory bars are on my arm.
Oh, your arm. I thought it was on your neck.
Okay,
wait.
And then I got Dark Side on my neck, or one of these sides. I can't remember what side of my neck. Right here, yeah.
Who's that?
Dark Side.
Oh, Dark Side.
Yeah.
The comic book.
Yeah.
There's speaking of Dark Side, and this is going to be more of Jess's memories, but when that first came out, there was a huge fan debate whether it was Dark Seed or Dark Side, because they both made sense.
Yeah.
The dark seed of all evil, or if he represented the dark side. It was spelled so weird. But that got Kirby for you, I guess.
Seed back in the day. And then after like working in the stores for so long, like I just kind of go with the majority pronunciation of it. So like people were, like, I heard Dark Side enough that I was like, all right, I'm gonna go with Dark Side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are do we have any examples of, like, besides Reed's graphic novel that's coming up, are there any examples you guys can think of say punk in comics?
I mean, yeah,
definitely.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay, I mean, I'll start with one just because they're my publisher. But Microcosm puts out a book. I think it's over here. Let me grab it. But Henry and Glenn Forever and Ever, which is Henry Rollins and Glenn Danzig as a couple.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding. I haven't even heard of this.
Oh, it's so good. And their neighbors are Hall & Oates, but they're Satanists. And the art is super great. Tom Neely did the art for it. And it's so good. This is actually how I heard of Microcosm, because I was just looking for like punk rock and comics and stuff like that. And this was one of the first ones that came up. And it's just so funny and it's so good. And they just actually came out with like an extreme, or like, I think they call it the completely ridiculous edition. That's like a huge hardcover version of it. And it's awesome. But I don't have that, but I just have the little collection they put out. But that's the main one that I always think about. But I mean, I think there's plenty of others. A lot of like Durf Backdurf stuff like that. He always kind of had some punk influence. There's like punk rock and trailer parks he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, when you mentioned Evan Dorkin, I think Evan Dorkin is a big time punk dude, especially with like, and he talked a lot more about ska, like you said, like Aquabats and stuff.
Yeah.
But I definitely think I think even more so than just like talking about music in it, but he approached comics in a punk rock way as a whole, just like
putting out all that dork stuff on his own. And he kind of likes to complain a lot, which is kind of a punk thing too. but, but yeah, I don't know. I think punk and comics definitely go like really, really big together. I think it's everywhere, even from like in, I haven't read it yet, but Kristen was reading Deadly Class, and like on one of the covers of Deadly Class, I think someone's wearing like a Black Flag shirt.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's everywhere. It's just become kind of synonymous with it.
Yeah, Rick Remender, the writer of Deadly Class, he's like a big time old school punk guy. And when we had him out to the store, like I spent more time talking to him about music than anything else. It was wild, but I was watching the first episode of Deadly Class on like Sci-Fi or whatever, and you know, I'm really bad about TV, and I'm really bad about comic book TV, especially because I'm so rooted in the whole comic thing that like before it's happening, I don't know it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy shit, that's Agent Orange. I was like, they're playing Agent Orange on TV. And Rick was like, you know, he was like, yeah, that's all that's him, you know, like all the music, The Damned, Agent Orange, all that's him. That's in the show.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He's really cool.
I'm gonna have to watch that. I didn't know Agent Orange was in the show. That's really cool.
Yeah. They totally play they play Agent Orange. They play The Damned. There's probably a lot more stuff I missed, but I've only seen that first episode.
I know, like Henry Rollins is in the show later on.
Yeah,
but he's like the poison teacher or something. Yeah, he teaches how to poison or something.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, somebody mentioned how he titled the chapters in Fear Agent after albums, but yeah, like the Fear Agent like trades and stuff, like those are all named after old albums, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are there any current books that have a bit of punk rock in them? I don't know. It's sort of hard to say at this point what's punk and what's not. But I mean, do they have like a self-published type of hardcore, I don't know, do-it-yourself type of thing going on?
I mean, Microcosm's probably the big place for a lot of that stuff. Like,
yeah, there's them. There's like Stolen Sharpie Revolution. That website puts out some stuff. I'm trying to think. I'm gonna forget what the name of it. I thought I had one over here, but I mean, I think just the whole self-publishing thing is like pretty much like your own do-it-yourself way to do it. I mean, all these people putting out books on like Kickstarter. That's like one of the most punk ways you could do it, other than the fact that you're asking people for money, but you're trying to put it all together yourself. You don't need a publisher. You don't need a label behind you. So it's just kind of like doing it all. And then, let me mention this, not part of your scene in the chat. One, thank you for ordering the book. That's awesome. And two is talking about punk rock, Punk's Not Dead. That comic. I don't know. I think
is that the IDW book?
I've not read it, but,
that book looks cool if I'm thinking of the right one.
I always thought like the covers always look neat. They've always got like the weird, almost like Xerox punk like looking covers.
Yeah.
But I've not read it, but I've always thought it looks neat. I'd probably need to pick that up.
There's a comic shop out in California that does like a small press called Secret Headquarters, and they do a lot of zines and mini comics, and they just put out the coolest thing. We just got it at the store. It's called Punk 2099, and it's like old like LA punk band album covers, but like done like 90s comics, like kind of like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee style. So, like, you have like Suicidal Tendencies, but it's like, you know, it looks like X-Men 2099, and like, and those guys at Secret Headquarters are always doing stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like they did I think it was called These Charming X-Men, and it was like basically just like, you know, Smith's album quotes with like, you know, the X-Men, you know what I mean? And
that's awesome.
They're super fun. But for punk and comics right now, I think what you really see a lot of is a lot of the people making comics right now have like a punk or hardcore background. So like Matt Rosenberg, who does a lot of Marvel work now, like Uncanny X-Men and stuff like that. He's a great guy, you know, and like you'll be rapping with him, and he's talking about like how he used to press records, you know, and stuff like that in the late 90s. And I think there's more people than we know that come out of that like same DIY background and then end up in comics. The two go hand in hand really well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think I read an article. It may have been a couple years ago. I'm not sure if I even read the whole article or just the headline, but it said like comic books is the new punk rock for like a lot of things, and I think that's really true. And I think it draws a lot of the same people because you kind of have the same ideas and like I don't know, it's just like the culture that surrounds it is pretty similar.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, they're both mediums that as a whole aren't really like, something that like the entire world really cares a ton about. You know what I mean? So you can do more, like that's kind of good, like comics has always kind of been beneath the radar, even with the movies. Like that's why you're able to get something wild like Transmetropolitan or Stray Bullets because no one's paying attention. It's the same way,
Yeah.
Kristen in the chat says Street Angel. I remember reading that. That was a pretty punky book.
We were talking about that the other day. About I've not talked about, or not really like ever seen Jim Rugg talk about it, but I have a feeling, or maybe I'm just not seeing it, but I bet Jim Rugg is a pretty big punk guy.
Yeah, like I mean, you can just tell in his work. There's probably something. Yeah, yeah. He's awesome.
That Punk 2099 thing sounds like something I should ask you to pull and put in my box if you could.
I'll send those guys a message at the shop now and have them put one aside for you.
So let's see, where can we go? I mean, I can still show you my Descendants albums and stuff, but I don't know that anybody really cares about that.
I pulled some records aside as well.
Okay.
If you want.
Yeah.
I'll start. The record that did it all for me, that started everything, is London Calling.
Oh yeah.
Clash. The Clash is like that, and just the best, in my opinion, the best punk band in not just like stylistically, because really, especially like I remember I did a paper on the Clash in the 7th grade, and a bunch of kids thought I was stupid, which was great. I remember I like played songs from it, and they were like, "This doesn't sound like punk music." And I think I played like "Lost in the Supermarket" or something on it, and they were like, "This sounds like my dad's music." And I was like, "Yeah, it's the best music," but no one got it. It's just the way they did everything, the attitude, the whole idea behind it. Joe Strummer is the greatest, and so that's number one for me. And this is actually my dad's pressing of it because he has the original pressing of it. And
I bet it's your dad's because I have that album and I got it in college.
Yeah, he bought it right when it came out, and I think that's the only like older one I have. Be fine. I want to see if you guys know, being where you guys live, probably my favorite hardcore and punk band that's happening now is Give. Not sure if either of you know who Give is.
No, I haven't listened to them.
Me either.
I'm a little out of date. I'm a little out of touch.
That's fine. They just actually quit playing. They just finished, but this is the only punk band I really have a tattoo of, and there's something about it. It's super DC sounding, so they've got a bunch of Bad Brains influence, a lot of Fugazi influence, and they're just crazy. And I have all their records, but this is my favorite cover because it's just all claymation stuff, and there's like Ninja Turtles in it, and it's just awesome. So you should check out Give if you like really crazy, psychedelic, fast nonsense.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, they are really.
Where did you end up getting that album from?
I just bought it online. That one actually, that's the one record they put out on Revelation Records. And I had a friend that I played in a punk band with who was obsessed with this band, and he just kept on talking about them. And I mean, like my origin story with punk is a little weird because I didn't listen to punk other than like old punk, so like the Clash and the Ramones, and then that was it. And then I kind of got out of it. And then I had friends decide to come, to basically just be like, "Hey, you have to come start going to these hardcore shows with me." And I grew up in the Midwest, like in Indiana, which doesn't really have much punk bands other than you have the Zero Boys from Indiana, and then that's really it. And then unless you're in Chicago or other surrounding bigger cities, so like Southern Indiana really doesn't have much. But I remember he made me go, and I think this is another one. They're actually on tour. I'll show this record. From Baltimore,
made me go to a Trapped Under Ice show.
Yeah, I know those guys. Yeah.
So I went and saw Trapped Under Ice as my first like real.
Right back, guys. You guys keep rolling.
Okay.
Yeah. That was probably like my first real punk show. Kristen just made me bring this. I did a poster for Give back when I did like screen printing, and so she made me show this. So I made them a tour poster back when they were touring. So
That's awesome.
did that, and I got them to sign it, which was very nice of them. But so she forced me to show that. That's cool.
Good,
But
good job, Kristen.
yeah, way to go. But yeah, Trapped Under Ice is like super cool. A lot of people don't like them, which is fine, but I think they're really awesome. And yeah, they're from Baltimore, and I think they just like were coming through Evansville for some reason, and they played in the basement of a church, and I got the shit kicked out of me, and it was awesome. Like in the Academy in the mosh pit. I think I don't know if that's the show I broke my glasses at or something, but it was just like this huge thing. I felt like a rite of passage, and I was like, I'm finally a real punk. I got beat up at a show.
That's awesome.
And then other Baltimore, I'm just gonna name all the Baltimore bands I know.
Steve will know them too, I bet.
I love Turnstile. Turnstile Rules, which is also some of the same people from Trapped Under Ice. This record, the Nonstop Feeling record, is a huge one for me. I think that's all the Baltimore bands. But I got really into like, basically I had a friend that was like, you're going to start playing in a band with me because I don't like anyone else who plays drums in our town. And I was like, all right, what are we going to play? And he said, you are going to play drums in a power violence band. And I was like, I don't know what power violence is. And so like, here's the crash course. You're going to listen to a bunch of Infest, and I think
Infest is great.
and he just picked a ton of crap, and we just went off on it, and I fell in love with it. And so we played in a power violence band called Jugs.
Power violence? I've never even heard of that. How old am I?
I don't even know when power violence started, but it's not that old. I don't.
How old am I to not know about a specific movement in music?
I mean, it's just the way it was described to me is it's the extremes of hardcore and punk. The slow parts are super slow, and the fast parts are incredibly fast, and there is no break in between them. And it's just awesome. But Weekend Nachos is the band that I fell in love with in power violence. So Weekend Nachos, Worthless, super great record. I liked it because it was kind of funny at the same time, like power violence. And I think hardcore does the same thing, but there's kind of been a trend more recently in hardcore where it kind of has to be serious. And I think it's kind of funny when you're trying to be super serious and all you're doing is just yelling. So like when, like my favorite song on this is like Old Friends Don't Mean Shit. Like it's just awesome. Or like The Fine Art of Bullshit. And like, that's what I always loved about Weekend Nachos is they're kind of funny. This is my prized record. It's a Weekend Nachos record that they put out for Record Store Day that they entitled Weezer Nachos because the power violence band did all covers of Weezer and they just made like or something like that.
Weezer.
And it's awesome because it's Weezer Nachos and it's great. Here, let me see. I wanted to ask both of you guys this, but favorite Black Flag record?
Oh man, that's a tough call.
I know they're all great. I mean, I will legitimately stand by all of them, but I don't know for some reason I love my.
I don't know. I think I'm in the minority, but I like Henry Black Flag.
Same. That's me too.
Yeah, I mean, like My War is probably the one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, cool.
Yeah. I think I was going to say My War too.
It's so good. It's
and
everyone hates that B-side, and they're just wrong.
No, I agree.
It's so good.
Is the B-side mostly Henry?
The B-side's it's just like almost sludge metal sounding. It's like not fast at all, and so everyone was mad about it.
I remember when that came out. Yeah.
I think it's so good. That's definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
record. And I think that's Henry's favorite Black Flag record. If you listen to his podcast, he talks about it once.
It's just a cool album, like all the way through, and I mean, like it's good. It's good. Really like it. You know, I mean, I like pretty much most of their stuff, but like Damaged is great and all, but like I mean, like My War is just that's my favorite.
I feel like
you know what? I'm changing my answer. I think Damaged is my favorite.
I picked up
and then I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna change. It's Damaged.
I picked my first album by them that I had ever heard was actually Live '84, which was an awful introduction. And
that's one of my favorites, no, but it's pretty rare.
I remember picking it up, and I remember like I think the first track is like Process of Weeding Out, maybe, or something. Like it's like a 12-minute song or something, and I wasn't ready for that at that time. Like this isn't what I heard at my friend's place, you know. It's like 13. This is what is this?
Here, I'm just going to show a few more. Let me see what I have. Obviously, Fugazi is unreal. I think that they may be, as I think Joe Strummer even said, that they're the band that most embodies the punk idea. Because they're just too good. I'm going to talk about one local band just because I have to, and I'm going to talk about Jawbone. Jawbone's a hardcore band from my hometown, and they're a Christian hardcore band, and I mentioned that because I feel like that's such a huge Midwest thing, and most of that's because all of our venues are in churches, and you had to be, you weren't allowed to get on stage and scream "fuck it" everybody, but also it's the only like hardcore and heavy music that I could like weasel into my religious household, because I was like, oh well, they're talking about Jesus, they're just screaming a lot. Which is really how I got into punk in the first place. They don't have any vinyl, but my favorite punk band is a band called Calibretto 13, and they are like, they're like the Dead Milkman men, but Christian. That makes any sense. The same as there's like Blaster the Rocket Man, which is the Christian Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
And they're great because they just spend the whole time talking about horror movies, and at the very end they're like, but you shouldn't watch horror movies because Jesus is good, and that's the end of the song. And it's awesome. But it's just ridiculousness. But I'll stop showing my stuff. Someone else can go now.
That's cool. I enjoy it. What are some of the albums do you remember influenced you, Steve? Can you remember?
Oh man, I didn't bring anything, unfortunately.
That's cool.
But I mean, I'm trying to go back. You know, it's not a punk album, but the first cassette I ever owned that led to the punk albums was Black Sabbath. We sold our souls for rock and roll. Like that was where it started. And then after that, it was like I somehow got Suicidal Tendencies album. And I think it was the self-titled with like I Shot Reagan and all that on there. And that was kind of like where it began. And then from Suicidal Tendencies, it went to like, you know, Rancid and Minor Threat, and like, you know, this was probably like 93 or 94. So I was probably like 13 or 14 then. And then from there, you know, I just kind of kept going and going. But I mean, I think that the albums I always keep coming back to are probably the ones from like, you know, that I got into in the late 90s. Like I listen to a lot of hardcore, a lot of there's a band called Integrity that I still go back to and listen to a lot of their stuff, and I really like them. It's like kind of a mix of metal and punk and hardcore and all that kind of fun stuff. And I really like Judge, which is an old straight edge band from way back in the day. And you know, of course, Bad Brains, I put them on at least 3, 4, or 5 times a week. Like I really like them a lot.
In the store or at your house?
Both.
Yeah, I thought I'd been in the store before here, and I'd heard Bad Brains before.
Yeah, I can put a lot of punk on the store playlist because it's fast, so you can't hear the bad words. You know, like I gotta watch out for Dinosaur Jr. because you can hear Jay Mascis real clear.
Yeah,
drops an F-bomb. But
yeah,
yeah,
I will say that Steve has awesome music always playing in any of his stores.
we probably were at the same show twice. I'm watching the chat.
Yeah.
You go to Autobar or Sidebar a lot? But yeah, no, I mean, I like a little bit of everything, you know, like, and I go through cycles too, where like I'll get really into a certain kind of period and, you know, listen to that, and then I'll kind of, you know, and I mean, my favorite band of all time is The Replacements. Like, if I had to pick a band and say that,
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite, like that is my favorite. And yeah, I don't know, like they're the one I never ever like get sick of or put to the side. You know what I mean? Like they're always great.
I got super into Replacements way late, mostly because they're a band that's highlighted in my book. Because I kind of went on like a way that where I was like, I want to talk about bands that aren't just like what you would typically think are punk.
Right.
And so, because you know, Husker Du is very much punk, and you know, putting out records on SST and all that, and then their nemesis being the Replacements. So I kind of talked about both of those and like how they had that rivalry, and I'd really not paid too much attention to the Replacements until I was doing that research. And then I remember when I dove into it, I was just like, holy shit, how did I not love the Replacements my entire life? And then like fell in love with it. I feel like that's a band that, like, when you find it, it's a band that I felt like I had like needed my entire life, or that I had like looked for ever and then never found it. And then when I found it, I was like, this makes sense. It just fits. So that's really awesome.
Yeah,
for my Husker Du album right now. Where is it?
they're great too.
Oh, here it is. Land Speed record.
Oh yeah.
Guys.
I like still has the sticker on it. What's that?
I said I like both of those bands so much that it makes me like Soul Asylum.
Yeah.
Because there's that weird connection between the three, you know?
Yeah.
When you were talking about you in '93 and '94, that's when I was in my shoegaze phase.
Oh yeah,
like Catherine Wheel and bands like that. That's when I was into that.
I love that Bloody Valentine. And
yeah,
Ride. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And Swerve Driver and Curve, those groups. That's what I was really into at that time.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the chat? Because I think we've pretty much covered this topic. Are there any?
I think someone was asking about pop punk. I like a lot of pop punk. I like the Mr. T Experience, and you know, like I love the Dwarves. The Dwarves are awesome. Like, and you know, obviously, you know, like I don't know, the Ramones and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was like the main band that I was in for like 10 years almost was a pop punk band.
Cool.
And that was really cool. I mean, like Jawbreaker. I love Jawbreaker. And then I'm gonna bring up this. Jess used to say that, or what did you say to me that one time I said about like a cool emo band? And he was like, there's no such thing as a cool emo band. And I was like, you are wrong.
I agree on that. They're emo bands. Yeah.
Well, emo, and I think emo kind of gets a bad rap and I like this band. I'm not putting My Chemical Romance down or like screamo stuff, but like everyone is like, that's what people think of when they think of emo. It's like you didn't have to wear eyeliner and super, super tight pants to be in an emo band, especially when like Jawbreaker and that's probably the only one I'm gonna think of right now. But our like Mock Orange, which is another one from Evansville that is probably one of my top 5 favorite bands ever.
Yeah, like I like Sunny Day Real Estate and Dropbox and stuff like that. Like that's good. I mean, that's the kind of the thing that's weird about music, is like I lose track of what the genres are. So I'll be talking to someone and they'll be like, yeah, you know, emo, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, you know, and then like I'm like, wait, we're not talking about the same thing. And then I feel bad, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, maybe it's different, you know. I kind of try and go, you know.
Yeah, it is interesting how the genres can get mixed up, and it's hard. I feel sorry for somebody that just says I only like this when there's so much out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so good, and to paint yourself into a corner of only liking one thing, I think is unfortunate, because if you like one thing, there's a lot of stuff that can branch out from it and still be really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like that's the thing. Like it's like same thing with comics, you know, like
yeah.
You can't really like, you know, be like, hey, I'm into this genre or whatever, you know, like you branch out, you find other cool stuff.
Speaking of comics, what are some of the top sellers right now, up and coming? Let's not say up and coming. What's the top seller right now at Third Eye?
I mean, like right now, like if we're talking like what's happening right now in the store, the Mr. Miracle trade paperback that came out from Tom King, that is on fire. Like we've gone through over 100 at our Annapolis store of that already.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. We had Tom in on Wednesday for a big signing for it, and that was super fun. And if anybody's local and is watching, we do have signed copies at the store shop, you know, still maybe I don't know if we're out or not yet, but he signed a bunch for us to put on the rack and their cover price, you know. Yeah, that's been great. Marvel has trended up in terms of superhero comics. They're doing really well. Donnie Cates is a newer writer who's kind of came about in the last year and a half. He did an Image book called God Country that was super dope, and now he's doing all this cool Marvel stuff. Like he like is actually like, I've never thought Venom would be as deep as it is now, but it is. Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing is kind of like a very Alan Moore Swamp Thing take on the Hulk that's really cool. Marvel's putting out a lot of good content. Image is starting to put out some really good stuff again. They kind of had a dry spell for a couple years, but they're starting to put out some really great stuff. Trying to think of the last really cool thing. Middle West by Scotty Young. That's a really good read. It's got like a 90s Vertigo vibe for it. And then we had an indie book come out last week called Magical Beatdown, which is kind of like it's like the magical girl genre, like Sailor Moon, but like they're going after creeps that like are like, you know, catcalling them on the street and like killing them, and it's super brutal and awesome. I'm trying to think of what else has been big. I mean, I think if I had to say like right now, I mean, I'd say like, just, you know, because I'm thinking in terms of just overall sales, and obviously in an indie comic shop, you know, superhero stuff is usually at the top. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would say like Immortal Hulk is kind of the thing that like is unifying everybody. You know, like just like Vision did when the Tom King Vision came out. Immortal Hulk is that kind of book. You know, people are like, oh, this is really crazy and weird, and not just like a Hulk comic. You know?
Yeah, I've heard that it's so popular that even back issues, even though it's not only, I think it's only like a year old, but back issues of Immortal Hulk are getting up there in price.
Yeah. I mean, like first printings of #1, which I think we still have first prints on the shelf at cover price, but they're going for like $20 online. I mean, like it's kind of crazy. And it's just a good book, you know. One thing that's kind of cool is how content like kind of determines like the like I guess the secondary market for a book now, whereas before it wasn't really like that.
Good point.
You see that a lot more now, where content is kind of what's driving that secondary collector's market. Like people want to collect what they love, you know, and it used to be just like, you know, like, oh, it's got a cool shiny cover.
Yeah, right. Super 90s. Here's a good question that I think, if this is the album that has One Arm Scissor on it, what do you all think about Relationship of Command by At the Drive-In? Is that the one with One Arm Scissor on it? Octahedrons? Because that's one of the greatest songs ever.
I had that album and I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I don't know if that track's on it, but I remember really liking that album.
Yeah, I remember liking that album a lot too.
Yeah.
I have honestly not ever given At the Drive-In that much time.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Listen to One Arm Scissor, dude. It is so rocking.
Oh, yeah, I need to go back on that.
Oh man, that's such a good song. I mean, that changed music for me almost as much. I mean, I just think I thank you for bringing up At the Drive-In. I think that they, like, I was in sort of a low point of music, and that thing just like blew the dust out of my room, and I was just like, whoa, yeah. So yeah, that really changed things for me. I love that song.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that like everybody was like, oh, you got to hear this, and I remember picking it up, and I remember really liking it. I don't know why, I just haven't listened to it in a long time, but I'll have to revisit it.
Yeah, another group that you turned me on to, Steve, was Cloud Nothings.
Yeah, I like them a lot.
Yeah, I
There's-
really like them a lot too.
Yeah, yeah, they're super good. I like them. They remind me of like kind of like the like Husker Du style kind of stuff, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, we had a good show. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Reed, why don't you have Kristen put in the chat again where to pick up your book, and why don't you give your book a plug and like when it's coming out and stuff?
Okay, yeah. You can get it at microcosmpublishing.com. It's available for pre-order. The name of the book, again, is Hardcore Anxiety, a graphic guide to punk rock and mental health. Looks like she just put it in the chat. So
Yep.
thanks, wife.
The wife of
The
you.
wife of me. And yeah, so but that book will be, I think the pre-orders will probably be shipping early. I think they said like around July or August is when pre-orders will ship, and then it'll officially be released in stores, available through Diamond and all that jazz in October.
And I have got my pre-order in, and you're suffering from a syndrome that I did not know existed. Too many pre-orders.
It was, yeah, it's pretty great. So, but yeah, that's what I got going. And yeah, thanks for having me on for sure.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Reed. I appreciate it. And Steve, is what's going on at Third Eye Comics? Do you have any? You always have some of the greatest creators showing up at, whether they're writers or artists or both. You have them coming up. Do you have any coming up? Do you want to plug?
So signing wise, we actually just got through a big round of signings. So we don't have anything 110%. Well, actually, I can announce one of these. Garth Ennis is coming to the store March 16th.
Ooh.
That's going to be pretty sick. We're pretty stoked about that. I just locked that down today. And he's coming to promote his new TKO book, Sarah, and graphic novel, The Night Witches. And really, really, really cool. Really cool. Next Sunday, Torma and I, Torma's our store manager at Annapolis, and he's kind of the guy who carries me when I'm on these like live stream things because he's better at it than I am. But
You've done fine.
He and I are going to be doing a book club next week at Third Eye, and everybody watching that's local is welcome to come. If you're not local and want to drive 6 hours for it, you're welcome to come as well. Yeah, we're going to be making pizza and talking about Immortal Hulk with everybody. So we're making pizza for everyone, and we're talking about Immortal Hulk, and we're going to live stream it on Facebook. So we'll probably make the pizza before we get to the book club event. So, you know, that might be a little bit much for us to handle. Doing all three of those things. And then other than that, you know, every Wednesday is an event at Third Eye. Every day is an event at Third Eye. We got lots of cool stuff in the store. And for those of you who are into like things like music and, you know, punk rock and all that, we've expanded our like book product a lot. So we have a lot of books on like, you know, counterculture, music, art, stuff like that. So definitely check it out. We get a lot of them from Microcosm actually. So when I saw Reed's book was coming out from them, I was like, oh, that's awesome, you know. So we'll definitely be carrying your book, Reed, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Nice.
other than that, though, Jess, I don't really have a whole lot else to hype. Just come see us at Third Eye, thirdeyecomics.com, Annapolis, Lexington Park, and Richmond, Virginia.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This has been great. I've always wanted to do the punk rock show, and you guys were the two that I had in mind, and this has been a really good show.
Cool,
so
man.
I really appreciate it, and thank you to the chat for participating.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for watching.
And as I always say, peace and love, peace and love. Thanks for watching.